Alright, well, welcome back to episode 3. Um, Today, what we're going to do is, I realized in the last couple videos, um, I'd been more or less showing you my reasoning and my playlists, as an insight to me personally, which is fully appropriate, and I intend to keep on doing that. However, that's not the ultimate intention of this series here. It's more to convey my thoughts, sure, on music in general, but also to enable the viewer to see things the way I do when it comes to analyzing other people and their playlists and their music habits. And by personally explaining my stuff, that isn't really hitting the point. It's hitting another point, which is, an insight to me personally. Again, like I mentioned, that's also a requirement of the series, hopefully, that you gain from it. But I've been falling short of the other goal, which is to enable you to do similar techniques on other people, or at least explain how I do it, and see if you agree, disagree, have any thoughts. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to start explaining the general mindset that I take when it comes to you find a new person, they have playlists or a Spotify profile or Apple Music, whatever they have, and you want to get a general sense of you know their personality, their interests, their lifestyle based off of the music that they listen to. Uh, and so, by me explaining my playlists, like the Eagles or the worship stuff, that's not something you're given if you're going to be looking at someone else's. You're supposed to do it without them inherently knowing that you're going through their stuff. The assumption is that they're not going to be sitting side by side with you explaining their playlists. You have to try and get the general sense for yourself. You have to make the assumptions. You have to come up with the conclusions. And that's something I haven't fully addressed. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at my profile here. We're going to start with me. And we're going to come in from like a neutral point of view, quote unquote neutral, in the sense that, yeah, sure, I'm doing it, but we're going to pretend that I don't inherently, know all the rationale for my playlists. We're going to pretend that, like it's you, almost. We're going to go through some playlists that I haven't looked at, or some other stuff, and slowly bridge into eventually looking at someone else's profile and coming up with my own conclusions and seeing if you can see how I came up with those conclusions. Maybe you have some conclusions of your own that you came up with too. That's fully appropriate. And then, of course, throughout this whole process, ask questions. Leave a comment, shoot me a message, whatever. It's good to challenge my beliefs, challenge your own beliefs, play devil's advocate here. See if you have something we can expand on that we can be doing better. Because ultimately, this isn't like a Einstein's theory or some sort of huge proven concept that I'm doing here. It's psychological assumptions, perceptions. It's very, very flawed, and there's lots of room for error. And the goal is to not master it, but just become fairly proficient at it. And so that's why I'm also going to give a disclaimer here. I'm going to try and do this before I go through anyone else's profile too as well. But the conclusions that you form when looking at someone's playlists or music habits aren't necessarily an accurate representation of that person. You have to take everything with a grain of salt. Don't put full reliance in the fact that just because they seem to have a certain music style or pattern of behavior when it comes to music, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what that person is like in real life. Of course, it can help you gain insight into their lifestyle and whatnot, but it's not to put full reliance into. And that's something that I've been reminded of past couple days or so in preparation for future videos. So I thought I'd like to clear that up before we begin. But yeah, without further ado, let's go forward. So yeah, let's say I made friends with someone or whatever. They found my profile, followed me, or they're just looking around, and right off the bat, okay, they can see a whole bunch of playlists. So if this were me here, like I just found someone, pretending I have no idea who this guy is, a log 10, never heard of him in my life. What type of username is that? Story for a different time, actually. But for now. So yeah, we can see there's a hefty amount of playlists here. So right off the bat, I typically look for how many playlists they have. If I see a lot, that says, okay, I can infer maybe this person has a sort of pattern where they get into something real quick and then abandon it later on. Like maybe they were into a certain genre of music or a certain artist for a month or two, maybe a couple weeks, a couple days. They created a playlist and then haven't really listened to it in a couple years just because it was a heat of the moment sort of thing. That's one inference that can be made if they have a lot. Another inference can be that they're a huge aficionado of music and its various aspects. Um, that they spend a lot of time listening to music, hence the reason for all their playlists. Another inference, they've had Spotify for a while. That could be confirmed by looking at the dates in some of their playlists. And what's the significance of them having Spotify for a while? Well, I mean, just shows that they were maybe into technology or into music at a young age. Again, depending on how old this person is. It's very situational, all this information that you're gathering. And then another inference, this isn't as common. It's very particular, but it's true when it comes to me, is that the person is very particular about their music tastes. They have lots of playlists, especially if they have multiple versions of one, like different, guitar mixes, or, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, specifically for soundtracks or something. It shows particularity. They don't want to just have one or two playlists just for a certain division of music, because there's more to it than just the divisions. They have to have subdivisions of those divisions. Invokes a sense of not inherently OCD, but just maybe perfectionist or someone who likes to have things a certain way, very particular. It can also be an inference. Not as likely, but it's true in the case of me. And then, so once you've gotten this, the overlook, you can also look at the images of the playlists. That's something I would pay slight attention to. If they're all the default images, like the 4 albums, or just the 1 album or something, then you can go into it and see if it's only 1 song. Because the way Spotify has it set up, it used to be different, but this is the way it is now. If it's a playlist without any songs, if I take this off here, it's just the blank, what is it, 8th note? No, 16th. I think it's 8th. I don't know. The music note with the gray background. And then if they have 1 song, it's the first song's album cover. And then if they have 4 or more, it takes the first 4 album covers that are different. So you can see we have Third Eye Blind, Enema of the State, Blink-182, and then 9. And you can see that that's the order that they're in. So Third Eye Blind being in the back, Enema of the State, then Blink-182's Blink-182 album, and then 9, which is their latest one, the Rainbow, weird one. And that means that the user hasn't chosen an image yet. They just let it default to that image. And then you can tell, obviously, if it's a custom image there. And then there are some cases where I've done, as you can see for Toby Mac Mix, I have 1, 2, 3, okay, already 4 different albums, but it's still only 1 album, Tonight. That's because I went in and I specifically chose that album cover. I downloaded the cover and then set it as that image. And so this is just basic information that you have to know before going into this stuff. You have to kind of know the layout of the platform that you're using. And so how does specific images help you infer stuff? Well, from my understanding, and I'm 90% sure about this, you can't set custom playlist images on the mobile platform of Spotify. You have to be on the desktop version. So if someone has all the default playlist images like this, where it's just 4 albums or 1 album or something like that, then it tells you they're a mobile user, or they use it on their Xbox, or on their Fire TV, whatever they have. They don't go on the desktop, or if they do, it's not often enough for them to invest time into picking out photos for their playlists. So that's a major inference. Now, if they have some custom images, it tells you they visited the desktop version a few times, If they have a lot of custom images, it tells you they're probably frequently using the desktop version. Now, what can you infer from that? Well, you can infer maybe someone who doesn't have custom images is probably on their phone a lot. Probably spend a lot of time on social media, on texting, probably on YouTube. Someone on the desktop version, on the other hand, probably spends. Okay, sure, they can be on social media and stuff, but that's more designed for phones nowadays anyway. I mean, they could still be on Netflix and YouTube, sure, but it's more likely they're maybe more working on school or typing up essays, or they have other activities on their computer that they're doing, maybe photography or coding. Just some general inferences here. Of course, this is never true for every single person. That's a huge assumption there, but as a general inference, that can likely be said. And I find desktop users more introverted as opposed to mobile users, people who are heavily on their phone, especially on Spotify and stuff. It just implies that they're more, active and texting than others or being on social media. Not necessarily the type of person I'd like to be around. Again, very general statement there, but it just gives you a sense of who the person is. And that's what we're going for here. So as you can see from all these custom images, it tells you that I'm likely active on desktop most of the time, which is extremely accurate. I rarely ever use Spotify on my phone, which is a conversation for a different time when we go into my personal habits. But yeah, so that's an inference right off the bat when it comes to custom images. That's a little something that's good to have under your belt. Something I like. This is a side note for Spotify and the friend activity here. It shows you, when they're listening, like how long ago they were listening and stuff. It'd be neat if they showed the platform they're listening on. So there could be like a little phone icon next to the speaker here with the sound coming out. It shows that they're actively listening to that. A phone icon if they're on mobile, like a little desktop if they're on the Windows version or the Mac version. Maybe like a Xbox symbol or a PlayStation symbol if they're on their PlayStation or their Xbox. I think something like that would be very nifty. That would help me a lot when I do this analyzing of other people's activity. Because for now, all I have is this assumption, pretty much based off of the images and stuff. And there's other little tricks in the playlists that you can see. Next thing that comes down to telling someone apart from mobile versus desktop is the playlist descriptions. If they're heavily active on mobile, it's likely that they won't have many descriptions, if any. So as you can see, the majority of my playlists have descriptions, as I've already shown you. I think I only have like a few that don't have descriptions. Whereas someone on mobile, you can set descriptions. It's just harder. It's sort of hidden. And they don't bother to usually do that. Depending. It's a general statement. Once again, I'm going to repeat that a lot because it is. I have to drive that point home. So yeah, that's the second way to confirm as far as descriptions go. And then if someone does have a description, reading the description can tell you a lot about that person too. Because now you're not just restricted to the music that they listen to. You can get a bit of sense of who they are by the description that they have made, the type of language that they use, their style of writing, of typing. Sometimes they'll inject humor into it as well. That can give you a good sense. Their seriousness, as opposed to maybe a bit looser, etc. It's very, very interesting. And then another note. Someone is likely more uptight if they have a bunch of different versions of playlists and stuff. That's again a possible inference, as opposed to maybe just one playlist for each genre and they just dump a whole bunch of stuff that I might split into different playlists if maybe they don't care as much. I guess again, just inferences tell you about the people's lifestyle. If they're a little bit loose when it comes to their playlists, probably a bit loose when it comes to organizing their schoolwork or their room or their email. And that implies an overall loose, laid-back lifestyle. And then, of course, there's always exceptions. They could be very uptight about the type of phone case they have or the type of sheets they have on their bed. There's always exceptions, but for a general sense, they could be a bit of a more looser, laid-back person. These are all heavily extrapolated conclusions, but You can see how they connect. I mean, they're not insane. Okay, and then now for actual playlist content. And this is going to be the section that takes a while. I'm not sure if I want to break this into two parts. We'll see. But so once you've looked at how many playlists, the images, maybe descriptions, etc. Next thing I look for right off the bat is if they have a favorites playlist. A playlist full of songs that are their favorites. So usually it'll go by my favorites or favorites right now or faves, etc. Mine is obviously favorite mix. I put it right at the top. And then you go through here. If they have a description, you read that, look at how many songs are on there, look at when the songs were added. If they're all added, in a close amount of time, gives you some sense. Maybe they just made this and sort of left it, but if there is a bit more spacing out as time goes on, it shows you that they might still be adding to it. They're still actively using it. And I can think of a few people right off the bat that have favorite playlists that haven't added to it in a while. And we'll go through that later. Hopefully by the time I get into looking through that person or these people, that it's still the same situation. And if not, no worries. There's billions of people on Spotify. We're gonna figure it out. So find the favorites playlist if they have one. Look at the songs that are in there. So description, the second edition of a modest playlist series that reflects my current taste in music through a handful of choice songs that I enjoy very much. Now that's a very complicated description. You're probably not going to find something like that. Someone else's playlist collection. The second edition, modest playlist series, reflects my current taste in music. Handful of songs. That's a whole bunch of complicated stuff. What's a playlist series? Why is it the second edition? What happened to the first edition? Where's the third edition? That's all questions that I can answer personally later. But, I mean, for you could just assume that this is a generic favorites playlist. And you can go through, I sort of separate songs by genre. This is something I can explain too. Usually, in my eyes, it's essentially good and not good. Good is something that I personally like, and I see this person listen to. I'd probably like to go hang out with them. Not good is obviously songs I don't like. And if I saw this person and have a good amount of them in their playlist, I'd probably not want to hang out with them as much, quote unquote. But then it's always important to keep quote unquote neutral stance. Again, so right off the bat we see the Cars. Now, what happens a lot is because these are all fairly old songs and stuff too, depending. I see a lot of modern songs in people's playlists or songs I haven't even heard of. So you're going to have to get used to doing Google searches. Wikipedia, lyric searches, Google the year, Google the artist, find out, just get some general things. The genre is the main thing, the year being second. And then I usually go to the artist, see if they have any explicit songs or how long they've been an artist, etc. So, I mean, if you've never heard of the Cars, I have to bet you can click on them. Spotify will show you the Cars. Okay, it looks like an old band. Okay, they got a few million on each song. This one has 100 million, so not a big time artist. They have some 2017 albums here, but this one's a live one from 1978, so it's kind of telling me that these guys aren't as popular. And as you can see, we got 99 all the way back until 80s, 70s. You see some singles, so more research would tell you that this is just a re-release of this version. They didn't actually make any new songs for that one, not that I'm aware of. So this is technically from the 70s. And then this one, they come back for this one or what? I guess they reunited or something to make that album. Haven't even heard of it, but yeah, and then a live album from 78. So it shows you that their prime was probably late 70s, early 80s. You can also judge that based off of the albums here. So yeah, 80s, 78, up until 87, just a re-release until 2011. So they probably stopped after 87, resumed in 2011. Pardon me. And then Heartbeat City, we can get the exact year, 84. So genre, probably 80s rock. Of course, you have to listen to the song a little bit too, depending. I don't always do that. This is a big in-depth analysis, but that's just something that you can get the general idea of. So I'd skim through it. If I see songs I don't recognize, I usually dismiss it. If I see stuff marked explicit, I take note of that, because that'll start to tell you a bit more about the person. So yeah, we can see there's a semi-decent mix here of looks like worship, uh, worship rock here, Queen, more worship. Okay, Eagles, Van Halen. We got some 70s there, 80s. Soundtrack, Mamma Mia soundtrack. What is this guy listening to? DC Talk. That's the 90s. Christian band. Well, more Queen. Okay, must be a big Queen fan or something. Eternal Flame, another 80s song. Carly Rae Jepsen. What is this? Some sort of 2016 song. What is this guy? He's all over the board here. Okay, so you can start to see the inferences you can be assuming. What's something you could conclude from that? Well, all over the board, sure, but generally classic rock, bit of worship mixed in, some 80s, and then some newer modern songs that kind of caught my eye too. Maybe a soundtrack. He has an exquisite taste. None of these are played on the radio and blasted. Modern pop. They're modern, yeah, but they're not. The culturally accepted modern. He has a bit more of a tailored taste when it comes to modern songs, doesn't he? It's not jam packed with Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, garbage like that. There's a big difference between that and the other songs that are in there. So yeah, favorites. Go through, get a general idea of their preferred genre, the type of music. I generally break it up into appropriate, inappropriate, sorta, depending. The explicit songs, and I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this depending on who watches the video, but you can tell a lot based off a person, or tell a lot about a person based off of the explicit songs that they listen to. The number, the quantity, the quality, as well, and depending on the artist too, because there are a couple of songs here on Spotify that are labeled explicit that aren't actually explicit. I found it too, though, a couple of those. In fact, I can go through them right now too. First one is Good Riddance by Green Day. Mark explicit. I can pull up the lyrics right now too. Another turning point, fork stuck in the road. You can look at this on your own time as well, but okay, it's not expanding. However, yeah, the lyrics, nothing explicit. I mean, what? Tattoos and memories and dead skin on trial. Is it explicit to talk about tattoos now? Because if it is, there are probably a good few million songs that haven't been correctly labeled explicit, and I'd like to raise my concerns about those. No. So what really happens with this song is the claim is that he drops an F-bomb in the intro, but it's extremely mellow, because he's strumming, he messes up, strums, messes up again, drops the curse word, strums again, finally gets it right, and goes into the song. If he does, it's extremely hard to hear, and honestly, I don't see it being worth marked explicit. Might as well just cut it out at that point. I don't know what they were thinking. Whoever labeled this explicit, I have a question, or some concerns to raise. And then, of course, all these other ones are likely justifiably explicit. A second one being Little Red Corvette by Prince. Let's see if this one... Yeah, here we go. Okay, it's really fascinating. There's a single version here that doesn't have the explicit label, as you can see. None of these do, actually. Oh, wait, down here. You can see it right there. It's kind of hiding until you click on it, which is sort of interesting. But yeah, this one, no explicit label. If you go into his 1999 album, you can see that it is explicit. So we look at the length, 457 versus 309. So there's two different versions there. If we go to another 309 one, the single version, and then you can see all the songs. So it tells you that there's, let's see more down here. These are the 457 versions. They're all marked explicit. So Spotify recently changed this. It used to be that the song wasn't labeled explicit. Um, and then a couple months ago they changed it so that it was. And I guess they sort of split it into two different versions or something. But the original lyrics, I don't recall anything being extremely inappropriate. He says the curse word that's synonymous for donkey, but uh, I mean, if that's suddenly a bad word, then 1985 by Bowling for Soup should be marked explicit as well because they say that word in there, and it's I mean, yeah, we got inconsistencies here. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. You have to actually look up the lyrics to the song if it's explicit, because if they're using the curse word to describe something, or more or less, it's very situational. In general, though, there's not much use to cuss in my opinion, but this is all very off topic. I just personally myself take note when I see explicit songs in other users' playlists, especially if I'm doing an analysis. And that'll conclude part one here, I guess. Probably split it into a couple more parts depending. So yeah, just a quick recap. Well, you go to the users' playlists, try and count how many. I would go in, maybe see the dates that they added songs, if they have any recent songs, if they're still working on the playlist, or if it was just like a one and done. Look at the images, see if they're on their phone or on the desktop. Look at the descriptions, tells you a bit about the person's humor and stuff, and then actually start looking at the songs in the playlist. I generally start with the favorites, if they have one. And then from there, I'll try and go back in, probably next time, start expanding on the different types of playlists that users can have, and how you can start inferring stuff from there. So already we know about me. Well, I'm on desktop. It could be more of the particular type, maybe the one that commits to something real quick and then sort of loses interest. Maybe comes back to it later on. We don't really know that yet until we start looking at the dates. And then we know that based off his favorites, he has an interesting diversity here, but leaning towards classic rock, 80s worship, with a sprinkle of modern songs. And that would be my general assumption until this point, which is fairly accurate. And yeah, until next time, finish up myself and hopefully start looking into other people and having no way if our assumptions are correct or not. So, looking forward to it. Thanks for watching.